The sound you are hearing is not a weapon of war. It is a 65-horsepower engine, roughly the same power as a modern riding lawnmower. The machine you are seeing now is the Tiger I, a 60-ton monster of hardened steel, an 88mm gun that could vaporize a building from a mile away. It was the apex predator of 1944. Logic dictates that if these two machines ever met on the battlefield, the result would not even be a fight, it would be an execution. One is made of canvas wood and aluminum tubing, the other is a mobile fortress. But in the autumn of 1944, a history teacher from Illinois named Charles Carpenter decided that logic was overrated. He didn't care about physics, he didn't care about army regulations, and he certainly didn't care about the odds. This is the story of how one man turned the weakest plane in the US Air Force into a tank destroyer. This is the legend of Bazooka Charlie and his ship Rosie the Rocketer. To understand why a sane man would strap explosives to a kite, we first have to understand the hell of the Hedgerows. It is September 1944. The Allies have broken out of Normandy, but the momentum is slowing down. Major Charles Carpenter was flying the L-4 Grasshopper. Officially, it was a liaison aircraft. Its job was artillery spotting. You fly up, you find the Germans, you radio the coordinates to the big guns behind the lines, and you pray nobody shoots at you. The L-4 had no armor. A single rifle bullet could pass through the pilot's seat. It had no speed to outrun a fighter. And crucially, it had absolutely no weapons. Carpenter hated this. He was an aggressive man, a former football coach and history teacher who believed in action. Day after day he would fly over the French countryside. He would look down and see German tank columns moving in the open. He would call for artillery, enemy armor, Sector 7G, but often the artillery was busy, or out of range, or the weather was too bad for fighter bombers to assist. Carpenter had to watch helpless as the Nazis escaped to kill his friends on the ground. He later said, "The idea of fighting a war by simply watching the enemy, it didn't sit right with me." He was attached to General Patton's Third Army, and if you know anything about Patton, you know his philosophy: attack, attack, attack. Carpenter absorbed this spirit. He realized that if the army wouldn't give him a gun, he would have to build one himself. The solution lay in the hands of the infantry. The M1 Bazooka. It was a simple shoulder-fired rocket launcher. It fired a 2.36-inch shaped charge warhead capable of penetrating about 3 inches of armor plate. It wasn't perfect, it was short range, it was inaccurate, but it was light. One afternoon, Carpenter landed his plane and walked over to an ordnance depot. He found a crate of bazookas. He then found a mechanic, Sergeant Walter Gammon. Scotty Carpenter said, "I want you to strap these to the wing struts." The mechanic probably thought the major had lost his mind due to oxygen deprivation, even though they only flew at 1000 feet. The engineering challenge was significant. You couldn't just tape a rocket launcher to a plane. First, the recoil. The M1 is a rocket, so it's recoilless, which was good for the fragile wing struts. But the backblast, when a bazooka fires a jet of flame shoots out the back. The L4 was covered in fabric dope, highly flammable. If they mounted it wrong, Carpenter wouldn't shoot the Germans. He would set himself on fire in mid-air. They solved this by mounting the tubes far out on the struts away from the fuselage. They wired the firing mechanism to a simple electrical switch box inside the cockpit. There was no targeting computer, no scope, no guidance system. To aim, Carpenter would have to physically dive the entire airplane at the target, lining up the nose with the enemy and guess the trajectory. They christened the plane Rosie the Rocketer, a play on the famous Rosie the Riveter. It looked absurd. A tiny observation plane with 6 heavy iron pipes hanging off its wings, but it was ready for a test run. The first test wasn't against a tank, it was against a nervous calm. Carpenter took Rosie up. The added weight made the already slow plane even more sluggish. The drag from the tubes slowed his airspeed. He spotted a German armored car, a half-track moving along a road near Nancy, France. This was it. Proof of concept. Carpenter pushed the stick forward. The Grasshopper screamed, or rather buzzed loudly into a dive. 1500 feet. 1000 feet. The German crew likely didn't even look up. Why would they fear a spotter plane? At 100 yards, Carpenter flicked the switch. Whoosh! The rocket left the tube. Smoke trailed instantly behind it. The aim was crude but effective. The rocket slammed into the half-track. The explosion was immediate. The vehicle ground to a halt, smoke pouring from its engine block. It worked. It actually worked. The mad Major had just turned a Kite into a warplane. But an armored car is soft targets. The real test, the ultimate prize, was the heavy armor. Word spread fast. Other pilots started copying him, but nobody was as aggressive as Carpenter. By the Battle of Aracourt in late September, Carpenter was hunting daily. The Germans were launching a massive counterattack with panzer brigades. These were the big boys, Panther tanks, Tigers, frontal armor so thick that standard Sherman tanks couldn't penetrate it from long range. But Carpenter knew a secret that every tanker knows but fears. A tank is designed to fight other tanks. Its armor is thickest at the front, but on top, on the roof of the turret and the engine deck, the armor is thin, sometimes less than an inch. An M1 Bazooka rocket could punch right through the top of a Tiger tank like a hot knife through butter, provided you could get close enough to hit it. And getting close meant flying into the teeth of machine gun fire. A Tiger tank has a pintle-mounted MG-34 machine gun. Every German soldier carried a Mauser or an MP-40. Carpenter didn't care. He developed a tactic. He would spiral down from altitude, cut his engine to idle to become silent, and glide in behind the tank columns. Imagine being a German tank commander. You are scanning the horizon for Shermans. Suddenly a shadow falls over you. You look up and 50 feet above your head is a lunatic in a canvas plane, and he just fired a rocket at your face. The press loved it. The mad Major, Bazooka Charlie. The stories became wild. But the kill count was real. By the end of the campaign, Carpenter was officially credited with destroying 6 tanks. 2 of them were heavy Tiger tanks. Let me repeat that. A history teacher in a plane made of wood destroyed 2 of the most feared war machines ever built. The psychological impact was even greater. German prisoners captured in the sector reported that they were terrified of the little planes. They knew the big bombers were dangerous, but the little planes were everywhere. They were watching, and now they were biting. There's a famous anecdote. During one flight, Carpenter attacked a column and took heavy return fire. He landed the plane, jumped out, and realized his boot was wet. A German bullet had pierced the floor, went through his calf, and exited the other side. Carpenter hadn't even noticed the pain because the adrenaline was so high. He simply bandaged it up, patched the plane, and asked to go back up. Charles Carpenter survived the war. He went back to being a history teacher. He died in 1966, a quiet end for a man who lived so loudly. But his legacy lived on. What Carpenter did was the grandfather of the modern close air support concept. He proved that you don't need the biggest, fastest plane to kill a tank. You need precision, you need agility, and you need the will to get close. In a way, Rosie the Rocketer was the spiritual ancestor of the modern attack drone. Slow, loitering, watching, and striking when the enemy least expects it. They say that necessity is the mother of invention. In the muddy fields of France in 1944, necessity looked like a high school teacher, a few iron pipes, and a plane that had no business going to war. And sometimes that's all you need to become a legend. If you enjoyed this story of desperate ingenuity, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories of machines and the men who pushed them to the limit. I'm Channel Name, thanks for watching.